It looks like the Red Sox have begun the conversation of extending Triston Casas. The big question, though, is will it ever actually get done? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin. One of the more interesting and integral parts of spring training for every major league team is the question of whether or not they'll see any extensions. Will their club, their favorite team, our favorite team, the Red Sox, extend any of their young or closing in on free agency talent? Now, for Red Sox fans, this has been a bit of a sore subject over the last few years, right? I don't have to go relive the history with you, but outside of Rafael Devers, hasn't been a ton of fun. However, maybe that can change. Yesterday, reports came out that the Red Sox have begun their conversation with extending Triston Casas. So what we are going to do in today's video is three different things. First, we're going to talk about these reports and obviously what they mean in terms of the grand scheme of things. The second thing we're going to talk about is why this is so important, why locking up Triston Casas now is vital. And three, we're going to talk about what a contract like Triston would actually accept might look like. But before we get into that, we are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. You guys have been absolutely incredible. We are closing in on just 600 subs away. So if you are new here and you want to help us get there, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you guys have hit that like button on this video as well. They really help these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so like I said in the intro, we're going to start by breaking down the actual report itself, what it means, all that good stuff. The first thing to pay attention to is that Triston Casas no longer has a beard. In the media scrum that this whole conversation took place, we got our first glimpse of Triston Casas with the still shaved head and a clean face. I was actually pretty pumped to see a fully bearded Triston Casas and what he could do in the batter's box. I think it would have been an absolutely fun time this summer/season, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. That's also not why we're here, right? I just figured I'd mention it, but that's not the main topic of this video. In fact, during this media scrum, I don't know who originally asked it. I don't know who was the original person to put this quote out, but Chris Cattillo was the one that I saw, and in this report, it said that Triston Casas was asked whether or not he's had conversations with the Red Sox about an extension. Has there been any extension talk? And his answer was super short, super simple, but super in-depth and complicated, and something we're going to have to break down. The answer was, of course we have. Nothing enticing though. That's it. That's the whole quote. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack in just a couple of different words. He also mentioned that he does want to be a Red Sox for life. He would love to get an extension. This is a place where he wants to be his entire career, which is always a good thing we want to hear, right? Maybe that's exactly what he's doing. Maybe it's not something he truly believes, but to hear it every time from someone like Triston Casas is always a really great thing. Now, you guys may be sitting there and being like, well, what does enticing mean? That could mean a million different things. And actually, Triston Casas was asked to clarify that a little bit. He was asked what kind of offer he would consider enticing, and his response was one that sets me and my family up for the rest of my life. I don't know what that looks like. I am low maintenance. I don't need a lot, and I got a small family, so I don't need much, but something that I think would suffice for the work that I put into my entire life would be nice, which it doesn't really clear things up all that much. It's not like he's sitting there being like, oh, an enticing offer to me, well, it's going to be $250 over 10 years with incentives that push me up over $300 million, right? It's certainly not that, and obviously he would never say that, but it does give you a little bit of a glimpse into Triston Casas' line of thinking and what he's expecting from an extension. So right off the bat, when we're breaking all of this down, it is a little bit confusing, but I also think a lot of the initial reaction is going to be doom and gloom, at least in the comment section of this video, right? Because from what you hear on here, the big thing that stands out is that the Red Sox offer wasn't enticing enough to the point where he had no problem saying no, according to Rob Bradford, and that sounds like a big problem, especially when you combine all of this with what they've done this offseason and the reports that have come out there, and obviously our biggest pain points over the last couple of years, there are other extension talks with guys like Xander Bogaerts and Mookie Betts, and how those have really gone, and how they've been lowballed as well, and now they're ending up with the Dodgers and the Padres. However, This is a bit of a different situation than this offseason, than with anyone else they've tried to negotiate with over the past couple of years in terms of extension talks. And the reason for this is because Casas is just into his rookie year. He still has a ton of time left with the Boston Red Sox before this actually becomes a need to extend situation. Right now, we're in the hey, getting this extended now would be absolutely fantastic, and we'll talk about why it's important in a second, but this is kind of a good thing. Whether or not this was actually a competitive offer by the Red Sox, whether or not Triston Casas went to them and said, I'm expecting 10 years, $500 million, or we're not getting a deal done, is a good thing for the Red Sox, because what this is doing is it's opening the door. Both of these people have now opened the door. They're looking at each other. It is now a conversation, which is much better than what it's been in the past, right? Being at that table, being able to have these conversations, in my opinion, is always a good thing. It was probably never going to happen where the first offer is the one that's accepted. That's just not usually how these conversations go. So the fact that you're sitting down at this table, the fact that you are willing to have these conversations is fantastic. On initial look, yes, it may look like this is a negative thing, that the Red Sox are once again cheaping out on somebody, but this is also part of the negotiation process, and you've got a lot of time to do it. You don't need to lock Triston Casas up right this second, although again, it is important to try and get him as soon as you possibly can. You have a little bit of time. You can start these conversations now, see where they go over this spring training and into the regular season, and if it doesn't work out, okay, great, let's try again next year. Let's see where we're at next year and what we can do at that point. But overall, I think it's absolutely fantastic that Triston Casas is getting these conversations started, that there was a contract offered to him to have him here long term, and I think it's a great start to what hopefully at some point becomes Triston Casas in a Red Sox uniform for basically his entire career. Now, I know a lot of people are probably sitting there and they're saying, Corbin, Triston Casas isn't even a free agent until 2029. Why are we talking about how it's important to lock him up right now when you've got all of these years of control? And I think that's kind of a fair statement, but I also think as Red Sox fans, the answer to that statement should be absolutely incredibly obvious. You wait on guys in the past, and now they're playing on the Padres and the Dodgers, right? That's essentially how it goes. The Red Sox sat on their hands. They didn't really start these conversations until they absolutely had to, and all of a sudden they're playing for different teams because you couldn't hold on to them or you needed to trade them. That's just sort of how this goes. The sooner you can lock someone like Triston Casas up, one, the cheaper it is and the easier it is to get done, because they haven't really had that taste of, okay, maybe I can get wined and dined in a couple of years and make double what anyone else is offering right now. That's what you want to avoid. It's what Major League Baseball is starting to lean towards. You're starting to see it pop up all over the place. You've seen it this offseason with Bobby Witt Jr. You saw it last offseason with J-Rod and Corbin Carroll. These are the type of contracts that are starting to be in place that allow teams to hold on to these superstar type talents under a controllable contract price. The Braves have absolutely mastered this. You take a look at their entire roster, and this is exactly what they've done over the last 5 years. They've been at the forefront of this sort of movement where you go in and as soon as humanly possible, you extend these players so you have superstar talent on manageable contracts over the long term. You talk about the Red Sox always going towards their core. We're building towards a core. This is how you ensure that this core that you are resting the future of this franchise on is here for a long period of time. So while yes, he's not technically a free agent until 2029, you do have the option of sitting there and saying, we'll wait until 2027, 2028 to offer him a really good deal, and let's just take what he's going to give us over the next couple of years at a cost-controlled rate. But that also comes with a ton of risk, and to mitigate that risk, signing him as soon as humanly possible completely negates that, right? It completely negates the, okay, over the next 4 years, Triston Casas is just going to get better, because that's the risk you take, and I think we're all really fully capable of understanding what Triston Casas is capable of. Think about it. If he goes into this season and he has an absolutely monster year, he gets even 10% better than what he was last year, he goes and he hits 30 home runs and has a 135 .385 OPS plus. That's a really great player. You're talking about one of the better hitters in the entire sport at that point. That's not even an exaggeration. You don't think that price to get him here for a long period of time is going to increase if he has a season like that? Of course it is. The Red Sox know that. Triston Casas knows that. So it's important to get it done as soon as humanly possible, because all you're doing if you're the Red Sox, making yourself pay more money and possibly make it even harder to lock someone like him down, which is why getting him locked down is super important. And the question is, what is that going to take? The answer to this question is actually a bit complicated, because if you look at it on paper and you look at what Triston Casas is worth, that's going to sit around 10 years, $110, $115-ish million. And that seems like a perfectly reasonable price. That's including his WAR, projected WAR, what he could actually be WAR-wise. It's including what players around him that are sort of similar tier, Pete Alonso, Matt Olson, are making and factoring that in. And that's all fine and dandy. But I also don't think this is something Triston Casas takes, and there's a couple of reasons for this. The first off is how confident and comfortable with himself Triston Casas is. Triston Casas this offseason has been talked about a lot, and in this same sentiment has been said by multiple different people. I think I first heard it from Sean McAdam and Chris Cotillo on their podcast, but Triston Casas is willing to bet on himself. That's who he's been. That's who he's going to continue to be. He's going to bet on his ability and say, okay, if you're not going to give me exactly what I want, I'm just going to go out there, I'm going to play my game, and I'm going to make you give me what I want. And I think he's fully capable of doing that. So it's probably not going to take just $110 million to lock him up for the long term. On top of that, Triston Casas is also looking around the league, and he's saying people sort of in his draft class into the Major League Baseball, that sort of graduating class, get these monster deals. Corbin Carroll, J-Rod, Bobby Witt Jr. are all getting deals that could make them extremely wealthy individuals. And Triston obviously not in that same category. I love Triston to death. He's not a five-tool player playing a premium position. It's going to take less to get him onto a long-term contract, but he's definitely seeing those and saying, I'm probably worth a little bit more than what they're offering right now. So if you combine a couple of different factors here, his confidence in himself, what he's seeing around the league, and his leadership skills, his off-field attributes that he can now factor into this equation, to this extension talk equation, I think it takes more than $110 million to get it done. But I think the best way for the Red Sox to do this and still make it reasonable for themselves is to make it around 130, 140 with a ton of incentives. If Triston Casas truly is the player that wants to bet on himself, that wants to prove to everyone that he's worth this money, great, do it. That's how you make your money, Triston. We're going to give you a $140 million deal, but they're going to be $70 million worth of incentives in there. There's going to be $100 million worth, whatever you want to do. All-Star game appearances, MVP appearances, plate appearances, Silver Slugger awards, all this kind of stuff that allows Triston Casas to bet on himself to make that money, but also saves the Red Sox money in the long run. Now, I know this may sound like a lot of dollars, the $140 million, but it could get up to $230, $250 million. Sounds like a lot, but if Triston Casas truly does bet on himself and he continues to play the way that he has played and gets to even league average defense at first base, by the time he hits free agency 2029, you're probably talking about a $300 million player, and I think that is totally fair with inflation within the game of baseball, as well as what his value would be if he's a league average defender and a well above league average hitter. $300 million probably could be in the ballpark of what he'd be looking at, or a shorter term, an AAV of around $30 million a year. That's sort of what I'm getting at here, whether that be over 10 years, 8 years, 5 years, whatever that calculation is. It could be a $30 million player by the time he gets out, so you're still saving yourself money if you're the Red Sox, and you're allowing Triston Casas to use those incentives. Overall, when you're taking a look at everything that's gone down yesterday, I think it's all positive. I understand the comments they're going to say, why do you care? You still got a ton of time. And I also understand the comments that are saying, oh, the Red Sox are being cheap again, nothing's going to get done. But I think when you're looking at this, them understanding that it's important to get him locked up before he's worth a whole lot of money. And I also think it's really important that they've opened that door and said, hey, Triston, what are you expecting? What are we expecting? Let's find a middle ground here, whatever that middle ground may be. This is all positive news. The question of whether or not it will actually get done, in my opinion, is going to fully depend on whether or not Triston Casas wants to bet on himself for the next 5 years, years, or if he wants to bet on himself for the next 10 years and see what he could do with the Red Sox, and that's totally up to him. But that's just my opinion, so let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think of all this? What do you think of the start of extension talks? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think this is something that could actually get done? And is it something you want to get done? Do you want Triston Casas here for a long time? Let me know all your thoughts on this latest Red Sox news in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor by hitting that subscribe button. Also, make sure you guys hit the like button on this video as well. Really helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.